ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much indeed for coming along. I'm Audrey Hall, the founder and creative director of the award-winning Safe Space Sisterhood, and I'm also an award-winning producer, presenter and podcaster who's all about telling it as it is, sharing the tales that need to be told over 3 platforms, so on air, on the Early Drive on All FM, with my Undisputed Music Legends podcast, and now as a community interest company, the Safe Space Sisterhood, just mentioned, and it launches today. So, I've got a question. How many reports do we need for the penny to drop? And if you're wondering what I'm talking about where we are placed. So, Black Lives in Music tells us that 86% of all black music creators agree that there are barriers to progression. This number rises to 89% for black women and 91% for black creators who are disabled. Even more, with 78% of creatives who have experienced bullying or harassment during their careers. Black Lives in Music research also found that black women in music face higher rates of bullying, sexual harassment, and disbelief. And this is a truism backed up by the findings by the new report from the Women and Equalities Committee. It's called Misogyny in Music on Repeat, which calls for a full and urgent ban on non-disclosure agreements in cases involving sexual misconduct, bullying, harassment, and discrimination. The Arts Council backs up these official statistics, and you'll find them in DCMS and Digital Economic Estimates. And what they're going on about is the worrying downward trend and disproportionate disparity in earnings for black women. And most recently, Creative UK's Unleashing Creativity, Fixing the Finance Gap in the Creative Industries, identifies black female mature creatives amongst the most disenfranchised group in the arts. But so what? The so what is that arts for all is the intent, yet that's clearly not the case for mature black female creatives who find ourselves at the bottom of the pile in the creative industries. And now we're apparently old at 35. And this isn't okay. So I created the Safe Space Sisterhood CIC, a sisterhood membership support community for female creatives more than 30 years old, sharing experiences to learn, grow and thrive in a safe and trusted, life-affirming space. And that's just the start. Women working across the arts deserve to work without fear. Yet, with intersectionality at play, black women and women from other marginalised backgrounds face even greater challenges in an already unsafe environment. So there are calls for government action for reform from the Women and Equalities Committee. But what of our own accountability? We've been singing Kumbaya since the days of slavery, and we still haven't got the parts. So we're not waiting for parity to happen. In the spirit of true inclusivity, there's a seat at the table of the Safe Space Sisterhood for all who identify as female, regardless of race. And in our utopia, we're opening our own doors to control our own future ourselves, as we work together to elevate the sisterhood, utilising the skills and expertise from the power within in a safe space. So what does it mean? Working as a freelancer can be so lonely, isolating, and even traumatic. So helping on our journey, we welcome frank debate in the Safe Space Sisterhood Speakeasy, and that's where you are today. A hub where difficult conversations can be had within the safety of the space without fear of criticism, abuse, or misappropriation. Does any of that sound familiar to anybody of you ladies sat there? Yes, just nod your head, yes. We're not angry black females with chips on our shoulders. We are natural born leaders, and the Safe Space Sisterhood welcomes that truth. Exploring confidence, free from all the isms, with and supported by women living the same reality. Factory International has given us our home and our safe space, but we can't reach parity on our own. So it's great to work with progressive bodies such as the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority, or CIISA. CIISA is all about providing support for fair treatment, enabling safe and inclusive working environments for workers in the creative industries. Initially, we're talking about film, television, music and theatre. And, importantly, for freelancers in the industry too, with a particular focus on preventing and tackling bullying and harassment, including sexual misconduct and behaviour of a discriminatory nature. So, with the launch of the CIISA standards earlier this year, following cross-industry consultation, Niyi Akeju, head of the Standards Development and Stakeholder Engagement, who led on the creation of the CIISA standards, working closely with organisations and individuals across film, television, music and theatre, is here to explore how we can dream differently about safety, equity and support in the creative industries. You've taken the first step with your attendance today, and we've won an award for this concept of the Safe Space Sisterhood, of how we're going to open our own doors to work together to control our own futures. So thank you very much for coming. It's your input that's actually going to drive how we go forward as a collective to work towards parity together. So let's get started. Thank you very much indeed. So, as I mentioned, we are delighted today to have in our presence Niyi. So, welcome to the Sisterhood Speakeasy.
Thank you very much.
Too often, victims are left without justice while perpetrators remain in positions of power. So let's start at the beginning. What is CIISA and why were the standards created?
Thank you, Audrey. So CIISA, as you said, is the Creative Industries Independent Standards Authority, and we were set up a couple of years ago. We were actually kind of originally launched. We came out of a number of different things that have been happening across music and film and television mainly. So you'll be aware of the Harvey Weinstein Me Too movement, and a UK organisation called Time's Up that came out of that. Well, it's also a US organisation as well, but the UK version was really keen to start looking at an independent advisory body to support women in film and TV. And then we also had things, as you mentioned, like the Women and Equalities Committee in Parliament, who were looking at misogyny in music, and the singer Rebecca Hall. Rebecca Hall, that's right. No, it's not, Rebecca Ferguson. That's right. So the singer Rebecca Ferguson is also an actress, Rebecca Ferguson, that's how I get confused. She was really key and gave some really powerful evidence to that committee, and they did 2 reports on misogyny in music, and in both of them they recommended CIISA as an entity. So I joined CIISA about a year ago, and my background is film and television, so I've worked for over 25 years in film and TV. I've worked at BAFTA for almost 11 years. I was at BBC Film as well for a while, and the British Film Institute, and also a skills body for film and TV called Screen Skills. So my background is film and television, and I've seen a lot of the issues that you were talking about there, and I've learned a hell of a lot about music and theatre since then. So CIISA was set up because there was obviously a clear need. There was a gap in some kind of provision to support people to ensure that they have somewhere safe that they can report their concerns. But in addition to that, it was about trying to change the culture of those industries. It's not just, oh, if there's an issue you can call CIISA. What we said is actually we're going to create some standards which mean that all the organisations and individuals actually in film, TV, music and theatre need to have the same unified single vision of what good looks like in terms of expectations and around harmful behaviours. So it's very much about bringing people together to address those harmful behaviours. That's how it started, and I can talk a little bit more about how we developed it, if that's helpful, and which organisations that were involved.
No, we best move on because I want to take questions for the organisation. I mean, you can do a quick sentence.
Well, I can say that my advisory committee included the people heads, or the heads of HR for ITV, BBC, Warner Brothers Discovery, Sony Music, National Theatre, Royal Shakespeare Company, etc. So that was the kind of level of people, and also trade unions like Help Musicians and also BECTU, which is the theatre and film and TV union. So we had really good support, and also some really good support charities in those areas. So Help Musicians, which works with musicians clearly, and also the film and TV charity, which supports mental health for individuals working in film and TV. So together we develop those standards, and we put it out to a really wide industry consultation. So they've been developed by the industry for the industry and endorsed by the BBC. Have actually said that every production that they commission must align with the CIISA standards, and they made that announcement a few weeks ago. And obviously we've seen that they've had quite a lot of issues recently, so it's absolutely great that they're working with us to embed the standards across everyone that they're working with.
Thank you very much, Niyi. One thing I would just say, because I always forget to do this, meeting did not start, let me hold this.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
It did not start with Harvey Weinstein. So, this is what happens. It's attributed to Harvey Weinstein and the Me Too that happened with him, but it was Tamara Banks who actually started it 10 years previously, a black woman. Mm-hmm. And every time they talk about Me Too, they say Harvey Weinstein, but actually, it came out of her.
We don't really want to give Harvey Weinstein any
credit
for anything.
No, we don't.
But yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay, so what services will CIISA provide?
So CIISA, if we sort of think about it like a pyramid, right at the bottom of the pyramid, you've got those industry standards. They are out now. We published them in February. You can see them on our website. I don't know if our website is, our web address is there. So you can go to our website and you can see those standards. They're also listed behind you, and at some point it'd be nice to go through them, so I'll do that in a while. So there's the standards that are out there already. People can start appreciating them, embedding them, using them, talking about them. Then what CIISA will be looking to do is to build some services based on the standards. So we're going to be providing support and guidance. We will be launching our own reporting mechanism where people can report breaches of the standards, and then we will be able to provide insights. Because what happens in the creative industries is there's a lot of freelance people, and they move from job to job to job, and they might complain in one place, but then it doesn't necessarily get to the next place. So the way that we're set up is that if they have a concern of breach of the standards, then they can report to us, and then we will be able to see a pattern, and we'll be able to give notice to those organisations, letting them know that, and also potentially supporting those organisations to address their issues. But also we'll be able to support individuals and advise them on what their next steps should be. And within the standards, they should ideally report in the first instance to the entity that hired them. And if there's an issue there, then they can come to us and we will help them to resolve that. Future services we were also looking at are providing mediation, arbitration, that kind of support where required, especially for those smaller organisations where they don't have the support of the big HR team. And also in the very, very small, right at the top of that pyramid, very small number of cases, like the most complex, we could be involved in investigations. So that's kind of how CIISA works.
But you're not the police, are you? I mean,
No, we're not the police. That is absolutely true. And we're not a statutory body, so we're not. We can't fine people or anything like that. But what we are is we're created by the industry for the industry, so that the industry can actually start. We're empowering people through the standards. We're empowering people to know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, what the expectations are on them and what are on other people. Do you think at this point it might be quite helpful if I actually just tell you what the standards are?
Yes, okay.
So they're actually up behind you, which is a great check for me. There are 4 standards that we've developed, and we developed these as an advisory committee, and then also got feedback from the consultation on that. And so the 4 standards are safe working environments, so that's about making sure that anywhere that you're working, anywhere where that creative industry's work is happening, is physically safe, psychologically safe, and people are safe from sexual harm. The second one is inclusive working environments, and that is about addressing discrimination and enabling accessibility. The third one is about open and accountable reporting mechanisms. So what you'll notice is the first 2 are about saying your environment must be safe, your environment must be inclusive. But the standards also include the fact that those entities should have open and accountable reporting mechanisms somewhere, well not just somewhere, multiple ways in which people can report concerns and can report those concerns anonymously if they'd like to. As well as having places that they can report them, they must also have mechanisms to ensure that the process is really fair, open, people know what's going on, they know what's in the remit of that entity to resolve and what isn't, that even if you are accused of something, if you're the alleged perpetrator, you're also treated really well. And so that's all really important within the standards, making sure that you actually have those open and accountable reporting mechanisms. And then the fourth one is having a responsive learning culture, and that is about ensuring that you are learning from not only the concerns that are raised, but also the impact of those concerns. And if you look at the standards, we actually have those 4 standards, but we have expectations against each of those 4 standards for everyone. So we list out what everyone working in the creative industries what's expected of them. Then we list out what is expected of those senior leaders, those people with strategic leadership roles. And then we also set out the expectations for managers. And we know in the creative industries that people get promoted through their technical and creative skills, and suddenly they've got all these people working for them, that they've had to hire and or supervise, but they've never necessarily had any form of managerial skills. They might not even realise they are a manager. So in the standards, we define what a manager is, and we also give expectations for managers in terms of how they support people through the standards. So everyone is the first thing, and that includes the big star, the lead person. They are part of the creative industries. The standards apply to them as much as they apply to not only those creatives and technical people, but the caterers, the security, the cleaners, anyone within a creative industries working environment. And when we talk about working environments, we're not just talking about workplaces. We're actually talking about anywhere where creative industries work is taking place. So that might be an online audition, it could be a rehearsal room, it could be a tour bus, it could be a promotional shoot, industry award ceremony.
Or even this festival.
Exactly, a festival.
There you go, I hope you're all feeling safe. Niyi, thank you. I don't want to say it's got no teeth, because obviously this is a tremendous thing, and this is why I was so keen for people to come along, because when you do work as a freelancer, you do feel kind of on your own. So it is good to know that there's somewhere to go. And obviously you talked about what's going on at the moment at the BBC. Looking at NDAs, I know that CIISA clearly welcomes the findings of the Women and Equalities Committee, Misogyny in Music on Repeat report. I mean, the title of it tells you what it's about. It's on repeat, it means it's just going on and on and on, which is actually calling for a full and urgent ban on non-disclosure agreements in cases involving sexual misconduct, bullying, harassment and discrimination. How likely is this to happen? And at what time frame are we talking about? And I'm asking this question because I believe foolishly, or other people say it was fine, I actually signed an NDA that stopped me talking about the most horrendous thing that happened to me. And if this had been around at the time, I probably wouldn't have done, because there would be somebody saying, no Audrey, you absolutely must not. It's really important. It's really important to know that there is something there that actually supports you and, as I say, has some teeth.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So just in case you don't know, in terms of an NDA, that's when you're being silenced from speaking out about something that happened to you. There might be some form of settlement agreement or something where they say, okay, we'll give you a little bit of money or we'll give you whatever, but please, you're not allowed to talk about this to anyone, which is really awful for people's mental health. It also means that things get hidden and don't see the light of day and therefore aren't resolved. You'll be pleased to know that in the last week or so, the government has added the fact that they want those non-disclosure agreements, the misuse of non-disclosure agreements, banned, and they're adding that to the Employment Rights Bill, which is...
can they happen retrospectively, Niyi?
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's really good and it needs to be reviewed in terms of in law, and actually the person who has been such a big supporter of this is Zelda Perkins, who is a really good supporter of ours. She runs an organisation called Can't Buy My Silence, and Zelda was the PA to Harvey Weinstein, and she was the first one in his cases to break her NDA and to talk about it. And by doing so, it's puts you in a very vulnerable place. But over the last 7 years, she's campaigned on this issue to ensure that other people aren't forced to sign something which could silence them either before something happens or after something happens, that they actually have the right to speak up. And the fact that it's now going through Parliament and being included in that bill is fantastic news. And actually what it's showing is, yes, you can break an NDA. Most of them don't actually have any legal legs, but there is an emotional toll to do that. It's a really it's a challenging thing, and it should never be something that in the standards we make very clear that is not something that should be allowed. We also cover other legislation within the standards, because essentially you've got health and safety, you've got criminal law, and you've also got employment law. At the moment, one of the issues that comes up a lot is that if you're self-employed, you're not actually covered by the employment legislation. So that's another reason why we say that our standards go, we reference the law, but we want to go beyond it. We want to make sure everyone, regardless of your employment status, that you're all treated, in the same way, and you're all valued for your contributions.
Okay, well, what I'm allowed to say is it was a company who I believe, what am I allowed to say? I believe that I was subject to racial profiling by a company, and we settled out of court. That's what I'm allowed to say. I'm also allowed to talk about the horror before and the horror after, but it was 21 months of my life, and I was accused of being a thief, and it was horrendous, and I said I wasn't going to let it go. And it's interesting, we're sat here today in this room, and I'm going to give props to Vanessa Kirkpatrick, who is sat right on the front row, to two of my sisters who are here, and all of the people who have supported me throughout. Vanessa was just unbelievable. As I say, it is such a lonely place, and to have somebody who has the skills. This is what I'm saying, we all have these skills. She's ex-magistrate and very clever and very beautiful. We have this between us, and the point of it is what I want us to do is to help each other, to network and come together. So it's really, really good to know, and I need to join that campaign, and I also need to pay a keen eye on when they say it's retrospective, and then I will be able to tell my full story. But it was 21 months of hell. And it was 21 months of hell, going to people in the legal profession who supposedly are going to help me, and every conversation I had over 6 months, I had to prove that what I was saying was true. So you're going through the trauma over and over and over and over again. I did get legal representation in the end, and sadly they're the ones who told me to settle, but there you go. I just was exhausted and couldn't take any more. And at the 13th hour, not the 12th or 11th, I basically said I give up. And as you say, in terms of mental health and the toll, it was awful. I had 2 weeks where I was almost inconsolable. So it's so important. So thank you, Niyi. Thank you for that.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, I guess the message we're trying to put over with CIISA is, it's so rare that you get not only one industry but 4 industries and real key players in those 4 industries all backing this kind of effort. So yes, things have been awful and there are still terrible things happening, and what we're trying to do is ensure that that doesn't continue in the future. And it has to be a very real structural change, and that's the approach that we've taken with it, so that it's really embedded, as well as talking to industry and working with industry and freelancers, etc. We're also talking to those that are coming up through the conservatoires and the film schools and the music schools, etc. So they understand what they should expect when they come into the industry, and the expectations that they should, how they should behave. Because I think what can happen is if you see things happening in a certain way, then you think, oh well, then that's just the way it is. And we want to make sure that we actually everyone is seeing and using best practice.
Yeah, that saying, it's just the way that it is kind of the purpose of all of this, we do not have to accept, not at all. How can people report breaches of the CIISA standards?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the first place that you should be reporting breaches of the CIISA standards, well, first of all, you should be reporting any concerns you have to the entity that you're working with, and they should be following the standards in terms of how they deal with that. Obviously, you can, at the same time, contact CIISA when we are live with our reporting, our own internal reporting mechanism, which we are not yet. I mean, if you saw how many of us there actually are in CIISA at the moment, we're tiny, but we will be getting very big soon. Funding permitting, etc. And we have government backing in terms of telling the industry that to absolutely make sure that we exist. So we will be launching that reporting mechanism. It's likely towards the end of this year, beginning of next, that we'll be doing that. But that doesn't mean that people at the moment can't already start referring to the CIISA standards when talking to people. And when they're looking at new contracts and stuff, they can ask people, are you aligned with the CIISA standards? It's certainly something you can be doing right now.
If only. I can't wait for those days, Complicit silence is something that we as Black people were talked about all the time. Complicit silence, you don't say anything, because if you do say things, there are consequences. You raise something and immediately you are the troublemaker. Immediately you are the person who is causing the trouble, and inevitably the person who is raising it ends up, they are the victim. But because of the way that reporting mechanisms work and when things get investigated throughout organisations, rather than them staying as the victim, they end up as a perpetrator. And that is something that really has to stop.
Yeah, and the standards are very clear on that. If you look at the document itself, I've just given you the headlines of the 4 standards, but there's a huge amount of detail in there, in the standards around ensuring that people aren't victimised, ensuring that there's no retaliation, etc. That's all within the expectations of the standards. So when that happens, that is a breach of the standards, if that happens. We know it has happened, and we know that it may happen in the future, and if it does happen in the future, you'll be able to report that,
So, say for example this happened and it's a breach, are we allowed then to talk about it?
So,
like on socials, and are we allowed to do that?
Are you allowed to talk about
whatever's happened? If we we feel awful and this is our group and we want to share something.
I mean, I think there's defamation and that kind of thing you need to look into, and I'm not a legal person, so I can't advise you on that. But what I can say is, if you go to our website, there's one page that talks about the standards. You can download the CIISA standards. You can download a little checklist as well for organisations, very high level at the moment. We're going to have much more detailed assessment tools, but there's a checklist, and you can check whether you are already meeting the standards or where your gaps might be. But also there's another page, and it's called services. If you go in there, can download the detail of the services I just talked about in terms of what CIISA can provide later. And that includes what we're calling a standards notice. So if we see like a pattern of behaviour, we're getting reports either around individuals or organisations or thematic themes that keep coming up. We're able to give a standards notice to the relevant parties and say, you're on notice, let's have a conversation, let's talk about what the issue is and maybe we can help you address it. And we're also looking at making that public in terms of saying they are on notice. We're not sharing the details of that.
Okay.
If you have a look at on the website, there's great detail on that. I'm more focused on the standards themselves and the development of that rather than CIISA services, but we have got a whole document which tells you all the planned activity there.
So I know we've kind of touched on it briefly, but we start off and we report the breach of the CIISA standards. How do we do that?
So there will be a reporting line. Exactly what that mechanism looks like, I can't tell you yet because it doesn't exist, but I imagine we'll have both email and website and phone service to report that.
It's wonderful this. I have to tell you that I met Niyi because CIISA had put out what they were going to do and they invited people to come along and add their input. And as always, the focus was on young people. It's always going on about young people. We've got to protect for young people coming tomorrow. And absolutely, protecting our young people is vital. But what I'm saying is, what about us? If we're talking about young people ending at the age of 30, what about people who are actually working within the industry now?
Yeah, we don't refer to young people. We didn't refer to young people within the standards consultation because the consultation was about creative industries workforce. So we actually say really clearly though that although we are informing students coming up of what the standards are, it's about them going into industry. We are not, as a student, you have to go to the office for students if you have issues around sexual harassment, bullying, etc.
Okay.
So we are not focused at all. Our focus is anyone who is doing any kind of paid work within the creative industries, and initially film, TV, music and theatre. And actually if you look at the standards, you can see how they can apply to other industries. At the moment, in terms of the sector-specific additional guidance that we're developing, we're just focusing on those 4 areas as such a tiny team, but in future we'll be looking at other areas of the creative industries as well.
It's really good to know. Okay. When will there be more detailed guidance on the standards?
Very good question. So at the moment we're actually working with what we're calling a number of trailblazing organisations, some very, very well known across broadcasting, music, theatre, film, etc. And they are testing the standards for us. So they're looking at their own organisation or their productions or their projects, and they're using the assessment tools that we've drafted and checking whether or not they're meeting the CIISA standards. So it's great for us because firstly it's saying, do these standards really work in practice? And secondly, do the tools that we're creating to help other people embed the standards work, and how do we tweak them to make them work for those particular sectors? So that's what we're doing currently. So that guidance is coming. We'll probably start to see the main fruits of that again back end of this year, beginning of next, because what we've always tried to do all the way through is constant collaboration. Yes, we could have just come up with some standards on our own and put them out, and but what we did was we talked. I have this stakeholder map with 200 different organisations on it. And before we launched the standard, I've spoken to almost 100 of those, and 20 of them were on that advisory committee that I talked about. So all the way through, we've made sure that we've done stuff. And when we did the consultation, which you submitted to, you submitted your feedback to our consultation, we had 700 organisations engaged with that. So that's how we do it. So it does take time because you have to bring people with you. It's not top down. This is coming from the industry, from not just organisations, but individual self-employed people, freelancers. We had such a wide range of people that engaged with us.
Well, it's fantastic to know, and it's interesting too that you're building as the Safe Space Sisterhood is building as well. Niyi, thanks very much. CIISA is all about preventing and tackling all forms of bullying and harassment in the creative industries, as Niyi has just explained. It recognises the power imbalances in these industries, the job insecurity and freelance nature of much of the work. Now, you know, talking about building, this is the start for the Safe Space Sisterhood, and my intention is for the Safe Space Sisterhood to become a collective of the brightest mature minds in creative arts today. But we also need a seat at the table of organisations and structures that can define and protect our creative futures today to inform, inspire and nourish the generation of creatives of tomorrow. CIISA is one such organisation. Niyi, thank you so much. And so now it's over to you to ask the questions.
Hello.
And good afternoon to everybody who sneaked in late. Me see you. Hello. Thank you so much for coming, and we are now going to take any questions from the floor. Anybody? Any questions? Tash?
So you mentioned it was for the TV, so for, because you're small, I think that's what I've gathered from there, just certain industries. I'm a venue owner which has a lot of performers call, lots of different promoters, so when would you be open to those types of
You are
organisations?
already in there.
I'm already in there.
Currently, any type of organisation or individual working in film, TV, music, or theatre. So we are, we have a great relationship, for example, like Royal Albert Hall, Sadler's Wells, English National
We're
Opera.
an independent venue.
And that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Any size. The standards, you even say in the standards are scalable to any size of organisation, production and project. We're talking to tiny little music studios, we're talking to really big corporations. They all are part of the CIISA standards, and the CIISA standards apply to them right now.
And this is something we can become
A member of?
So actually, we don't currently have a membership sort of process. Basically, you can align yourself with the CIISA standards now. Go and have a look at the standards, have a look at that initial high level checklist we've got there, and just see, do you meet those expectations? If you went through each point in the CIISA standards, could you say, actually, yes, we have made sure that everyone in all our contracts, service agreements, verbal briefings, etc. Do we make it clear around what we mean by a safe and inclusive working environment? Do we offer people a range of options of how they could report concerns? Are people trained to receive those concerns and support them? So all of that stuff you can do now.
And we're then able to promote and say that we align with that, or
yeah, you can say that you align with that. It's interesting because it gets to go into operational stuff, which isn't really my area. I mean, bluntly, first of all, we're funded by industry, so we have lots of big organisations and membership bodies funding us. So that's great that they're our funders, but that doesn't mean that we're saying that they meet the CIISA standards. We're just saying that they're funding us, and it's great because the big are funding the small. We have this sliding scale, so those are really big organisations. I think it's like 0.01% of UK turnover or something. But anyway, the big ones pay in, so that everything that I'm talking about in terms of having the standards and a lot of the the sort of tools, we're aiming to just give those to anyone for free, so that there's no payment thing there. There will be some services that CIISA provides in terms of training and things like, mainly training actually, but also potentially we might be looking at doing this thing called an assurance, where you actually go into different organisations and you check, and then we might be able to go, yes, we've looked at everything you do, and you look like you're meeting the CIISA standards. That doesn't mean you're purer than pure, because it doesn't mean there won't ever be a concern, but you've put in place all the things that we said. But that doesn't exist yet. But as the BBC, they've already said, all the production companies that they commission, they have to align with the CIISA standards now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you for your answers. And
Thank you.
can I ask a
Oh,
question?
so can I also ask what venue?
It's Six Trees Kitchen, Trafford Park.
Great, thank you.
A question to you, Audrey, please. The Safe Space Sisterhood. So, what if I would like some help and support? How do I get that from the Safe Space Sisterhood? Is there good? Will you have meetings? Is there? I just like to know how you engage and how you be part of that.
Okay, so today is let's call this day one. We actually had a pilot at the Women of the World Festival last year May, which was tremendous. And since then we've been gathering feedback on what you want. And basically, because I love my music, I called it, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And I really do want you to tell me what you want, but the thing that came through loud and clear is that people felt vulnerable. And they felt vulnerable in terms of promoting themselves, because the way that you do that is that you have to tell of your idea, tell of yourself. And there's an awful lot of something called appropriation going on in the industry, and it's almost like you are bled dry for this information on how it really is for us doing X, Y, and Z. And you build a relationship with somebody, imagining that means that you two go forward together. And sadly, what is happening, or what has happened certainly to a lot of people who gave the feedback, is that they want the ideas, but they don't want them. So they've given of themselves for however long it is, and then you find out that that work is taken on board like a sponge, badged up as something else, and you're still out there in the cold. So what I've said is that we need to be able to know that we can be in a space where we can share of our ideas, but not only that, we can help each other. I want us to help each other. Tash was on my programme this week, incidentally, and that's Audrey's Early Drive and All FM, and you can listen back to it. It's raw, live and direct. I didn't check it. One of the technicians at All FM did it for me, because I'm transitioning onto new systems, so it's absolutely live and direct. But you at Six Trees, Tash, and you explained it in the interview, you almost go through a CIISA process yourself. They only work with people, and they only take on board promoters who actually meet their exacting standards. So you're already doing it, and what do I want you to do? How is it going to work for the sisterhood? I want people to join and say who they are, and then I want us to start employing each other. I want us to elevate each other. I want us to know that actually, if I do something with Tash, say whatever it is, we're putting on a gig, and I'm doing it, and I know what my expertise is. I'm great on the microphone, blah, 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 blah. But Tash is great on the organisation, and she's got the venue, and this, that, and the other. Why not do it with her together? Why not share that load? Why not bring her on board? Yes, you get half the money, but what you actually produce is something that is first class. And that's what I want us to do. I want us to realise that, okay, I might not be able to make a feature film, but somebody who's in the Safe Space Sisterhood has done it before, and they might be able to help me. So it's almost like it's not a job swap as such, but basically it's for us, as I say, to create a hub and to create a membership. This is who we are. So I'm Audrey Hall, try me, presenter, podcaster, whatever it is. I want us to do all of this. And then I want you to have a look at it and think, I'm having a gig next week, it could really benefit from whoever it is, the skills of this person, I'm going to bring that person on board too. And it is this idea that we can do this together. I really want us to do it together. So what can it do for you? I just want you to join, to say, I'm Tash D, this is Sixth Tree Kitchen, this is what we do. blah, 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 and then I want you to say, I'm Niyi Akeju, I'm at CIISA, this is what I do, and then I want you to say, I'm Audrey Hall, I'm whatever, this is what I do, and then I want us to be looking at this. This is something that is going to be on the website, incidentally. I want us to look at it and think, yeah, do you know what, this is a really good idea, I can help this person, I'm going to join, and I'm going to come along. And in terms of what else you're going to get, I'm hoping that every 2 months we're going to have one of these get-togethers. It's a networking opportunity, but also to bring along a speaker to deal with something that is actually affecting our lives daily. The thing that I want to look at next is otherness. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the next meeting, hopefully, unless there's another George Floyd. God help that there won't be. But I want us to have a look at what this actually means and the way that we are perceived. Because an awful lot of perception around who and what we are is incorrect. So I want that absolutely stamped out, and I want us to discuss what it is that's going on, what it is that needs to go on, and then we feed back into organisations like CIISA or wherever it is that we need to go. The thing that I learned about the Safe Space Sisterhood, I started it and I said, we are going to work, you know, black women are at the bottom of the pile in the creative arts industries. This is not okay. We are going to work together for inclusion and parity. Inclusion means giving us an opportunity to compete. It actually means giving us an opportunity to earn a living. And then I looked at this and I thought, Audrey, you can't do this. You can't do this on your own. There's massive organisations out there claiming that they're going to get rid of the disparity in the earnings. And it's something that's going to happen over time. We're creeping towards it. But the important thing is if you are aware of what's going on, and the fact that there's all of these organisations actually confirming what's going on, you're in a position of knowledge. You know what you can do, maybe, or you know who you can ask, or there will be somebody within our sisterhood who may well be able to help you. But at the moment, it's a networking opportunity. We're going to be dealing with serious issues. I mean, it's not all doom and gloom, you know. This is, when we're talking about the creative industries and what we're doing, it's not doom and gloom. This is people who have brilliant ideas, who are trying to translate whatever their idea is into song, into film, into art, into theatre, into poetry, whatever. And they just need a bit of a helping hand to do that. And that's what I want to do. I want to say, I know there's all this help for people 18 to 35, but actually, what about the people who are living and working now? We're going to go to, my mum's 90. She needs catering for. What about her? She might have an idea. She might have written a poem. Why shouldn't she help? Why shouldn't she be helped? So that's the idea. That's what I'm trying to do. But it's contracted from I'm going to change the world to actually let's get this as a really strong networking group where we really support each other and build from there. And you tell me what you want. You know, that's what I'm asking you to do. What is most important to you? Is it work? Is it networking? Is it getting rid of somebody? You know, is it getting rid of an issue that's going on? That's what I want us to do.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Any other questions? No? Really? Claire? What about your Irish question? Come on. Claire is... Oh, right, sorry, yeah, please.
No, I recently completed a certification with the CIPD, and so I'm assuming, and I looked it up, but I realised that CIISA is not part of the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, but is there some kind of collaboration? Because a lot of the standards we covered were those, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've taken the learning from the people that we've worked with, a lot of them being HR people within their organisations, so they were bringing both their HR experience but also their knowledge of particular industries and how those particular industries work. So yes, if you look at the standards, they're not really rocket science, but what we do know is that they've been created through really deep consultation with the industry, so that, you know, we know that people go, actually, yeah, that makes sense. We know that as well, because I have this great slide that's got the stats on it in terms of the feedback we got from the consultation, where 80% of people said, yeah, these are really clear, these are great, you know, and we can see how they relate, I can see how they relate to my role, regardless of whether they were a puppeteer or an opera singer or whatever, or lighting designer or whatever. And then the lower figure, just under 60%, said, well, I think that I feel confident that these will be used in practice. You know, so that was a lower figure, and that's for two reasons. First one, as I've mentioned, the standards set out what the expectations are. They don't go into granular detail about how to do it in particular sectors. So that's what we're working on now. They are detailed. They're very detailed, but they're not. You know, they're not saying, you know, if you work in music and you've got this issue, go to X, Y, and Z. You know. So, and the other reason was they said, well, it's great on paper, will people actually use it? You know, proof's in the pudding. That, again, is what we're doing. We're working with all those organisations, all those different freelance groups, trade bodies, etc., and, you know, doing lots of talks and just trying to spread the word. And I'm hoping, you know, like Safe Space Sisterhood is another great network to be able to spread the word about CIISA existing, because the more that everyone is empowered, the more that the standards will work. You know, the more you have people saying, oh, are you in line with the CIISA standards? We already have funding organisations starting to put that question, awards bodies starting to think about, you know, adding that as a question. You know, the more it's embedded, the more people are like, oh, okay, yeah, this is something that's important to us. And believe me, we have really strong support. This isn't one of those things where, oh, it might happen, or etc. This is top level all the way through. You know, our chair is Baroness Helena Kennedy, who sits in the House of Lords and is incredibly well respected human rights lawyer. You know, we've got support. We've got Lisa Nandy's support from, you know, the culture secretary, etc. So, you know, I know that it's tempting to continue talking about all the challenges, and there are a lot of challenges, and we want to hear about them. But believe me, this is something where we've been looking at those challenges and looking at how we can actually resolve them. Because I only ever do a speaking panel if I feel like I'm coming with something positive, an action, a to-do. And this is, you know, this is where we want to say, okay, I'm going to go and look at the standards myself, I'm going to familiarise myself, I'm going to feed back if I've got any thoughts about it, and I'm also going to start implementing it.
It's really interesting. You know, there is with all of this stuff that's going on these days in terms of otherness, there is a train of thought where they're basically saying, get over it. Stop moaning and get over it. Now, I'm not saying stop moaning and get over it. What I'm saying is it's time to flip the script. Let's stop thinking that we can't do, this is too big. Do and work and create whatever it is that you need to do, but we can do it. If you can't do it on your own, there will be somebody within the sisterhood who can help you. So rather than be waiting on somebody else to give us a job, an opportunity, whatever you want to call it, take your idea and run with your idea and do it. And if you need help, come back and ask. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's time to flip the script, get on with it, in the sense that this is something that we can do, and it certainly will be wonderful if it's something that we can do together. So that's kind of where we are. Is there a final question before we wrap up from anyone? Yes. Yes. Should we do that? No? We can do both. We can do both. We've got time.
Sorry, just for clarity. So I understand what you said when somebody speaks out, a whistleblower, they tend to be victimized and they get targeted. So I've always wished there would be more whistleblower protection, because that will protect us all. You know, we are the police at the end of the day. So if somebody comes to you, and I understand you're being funded by the organizations, usually it's the individual who will come to you against such an organization. So what will happen next?
So we actually have two completely separate boards we have the Board of Finance, and then we have the CIISA board, and Baroness Lena Kennedy and other amazing lawyers actually, as well as regulator experts sit on the board, and then the Board of Finance is completely separate. There is no correlation between the funding that goes in and the work that CIISA does. You know, our message is the big support the small in terms of the funding, but there's no correlation, you know, unless we're providing like training services, which we're not doing yet. But in terms of the standards themselves, breaches of the standards, you know, and the standards notices I talked about, that's got nothing to do with the how much they're funding us.
And then when that person comes to you with this issue, whatever it is, what is the accountability? What, you know, how are you going to approach this company or this, and what accountability? Is it going to be name and shame? Is it going to be, what is it going to be? And what safeguarding will be provided for the whistleblower?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, this is really key questions. I would recommend you go to our website and have a look at the services document, because it's very detailed in terms of explaining that and about the standards notices that I mentioned earlier, in terms of being able to publicly say we have put out a notice against X organisation. So I would definitely have a look at that. And in terms of the support mechanisms, you know, they are very much in place and in the way that we would be working, but they also need to be in place at the entity that hired them, and that's part of the standards as well.
Thank you.
Was that helpful? Was it helpful? Did you feel assured?
I do feel assured, but maybe
I still want to know, what is the accountability? What procedures will be there once that person comes to you and mentions blah blah blah?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to operate? What are you going to do to that the perpetrator, to the organisation?
Yes.
What's the point of that person coming to you with this issue?
Sure.
What will happen?
Sure. Also, I've got to be clear that if they are an employee, then they do need to go through the internal process first. And we're not an appeals body for it, and we're not going to get involved in ongoing stuff. But if we're getting reports that people have had awful experiences with particular organisations, we'll put them on notice. And I've worked in stakeholder engagement, but also corporate communications and reputation management for over 25 years. And I know, and I think you probably know really, in terms of the experiences we've seen, is nobody wants their reputation tarnished by other people in the industry knowing their dirty washing.
so it's
You
name
know.
and shame, which is very important.
Nobody wants their reputation tarnished. And it shouldn't be coming from that, it should be coming from actually taking care of the people that are working with you. But obviously there is that on top. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And a question from here at the front, please, with Vanessa.
You said earlier that you hope that Safe Space Sisterhood will be able to help spread the work, the objectives of CIISA. There's clearly a synergy between the two, so how can you help Safe Space Sisterhood achieve some of its objectives too?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can talk about whatever.
Oh, yes, please.
But basically what we're doing is we are trying to address bullying, harassment, discrimination within the creative industries, and we will help any organisation. At the moment, there's literally like 6 people in our organisation. We've got a CEO, COO, finance director, etc., and me. But we are growing, and once we start taking reports, we'll be very big in terms of what we're doing. But yeah, we really want to. We have so many different freelance type networks, special interest groups, who all have these challenges, and we want to support all of them in terms of making sure. That's why the way the standards have been written is that's why we've had insight from the likes of Safe Space Sisterhood in creating the standards to ensure that they meet what they need. So yes, they're broad, but actually they're not that broad. They can be used for different underrepresented groups, different marginalised groups, etc. The same standards apply.
Because talent drainage is a massive problem in
Yeah.
the creative industries, and I know that's something that particularly drives the principles of Safe Space.
Well, exactly, and one thing that I should mention again is another thing that we don't do is we don't look at the stuff that unions do. We're not about contractual payment area. That's not our area. But our area in terms of making sure that people stay in the industry and want to stay in the industry Absolutely. We want to make sure that people, good people, don't feel like they have no place or don't feel like they can stay in the industry. We want to make sure that they stay. We actually put out a report the other day, and I can't remember the figures, so this is going to be embarrassing, but we actually put out, and you'll see it on our website, a report on the economic loss of bullying and harassment across the creative industries. I want to say it was 1.3 billion, but check the website because that could be a completely wrong figure. So we've done that work, and we've put that to government and to some of those select committees that we were talking about, and they are very aware of the financial loss, as well as the moral awfulness of bullying, harassment, and discrimination within the industries.
Was that? I think also a thing that I want to mention as well when we're talking about talent drainage is the fact that when you are on your own and you're on the outside and you're trying to look in, that's how I describe myself. I've already explained that it's really, really lonely. But more importantly, it's kind of so what? Every organisation I've gone to, because what I'm doing is affiliating. I want the Safe Space Sisterhood to affiliate, and I want to use words like we're affiliated. In fact, when I wrote my first script, I said that I was working in partnership with Niyi, and I had to change that too. We're working together, because obviously in partnership has a legal implication. But that's what I want. I want us to be aligned or work with other organisations. And I've been to 3 brilliant organisations. I'm not going to name them because they're brilliant organisations, but every single one, it's like, pay this and then you can have that. Not one single person said, yes, Audrey, as Vanessa was saying, we love the fact that what you're trying to do is to create this hub of mature talent, and absolutely we want you on our side. What they're saying is, we want you on our side, but pay.
Currently, you don't have to pay anything to be listed as a supporter on the CIISA website. So if you provide the logo and we feel that, yes, you're a great ally, which we already believe, then you can be on our website. I do know that there's fundraising thoughts about that kind of stuff. It's not my area. But currently, if you want to be put on the CIISA website, we are very happy to have you listed as a supporter.
You watch, next time you look on CIISA's website,
watch
you're going to
the
see the Safe Space Sisterhood logo. Are there any questions from anybody else before I do a wrap up? Yes, at the front there, please. Maya. Let me tell you, I was at an event last week Tuesday, and I am really delighted. There's 4 people who were at that event who've come along today. And at the front is Maya. Maya is deaf, and she came to me at the end, and she basically said, I was delighted. She said, you speak really clearly. I got everything that you said, because she's got this app, this live app that transcribes as people speak. But she couldn't catch everything. But what she did is brought to my attention the fact that I'm saying this is inclusive. When I started, this was like, oh, black and brown women are at the bottom of the pile, let's do it for black and brown women. But there's no point us sitting around and passing each other on the back and saying this is what our reality is. We need to hear what other people's realities are, and we need to share that information with people who aren't in that situation, who can come along and do something to help and support. As I say, we need to sit at that table. I had missed, we're inclusive, we're doing everything. I hadn't thought about people who were deaf. That gave me the opportunity to go back to Factory International, who do use the services of signers, and to have this for our session today. But how wonderful is that? And that, to me, is sisterhood in practice. Maya said something, it was really important. She's sitting on the front where she wanted to do, but better than that, we've got this lovely lady, I've got your name now, what's your name? Cheryl, here with us this afternoon to help anybody who perhaps is deaf and needs that additional support. So that was sisterhood in practice. Anyway, Maya, your question, please.
Yes, so I appreciate everything you did with the rapporteur. So I would like to ask you, how do you provide accessibility to every neurodivergent, wheelchair, you know, just to get through? Because I understand that accessibility is very expensive and it shouldn't be in the government. So, yeah, how do you provide that every time?
Is that to me?
Is that to me or is that to CIISA?
Oh, I know you.
Yeah, so in terms of CIISA, we aim to be absolutely accessible. That's, you know, that we want to live our values and our standards. We have actually, it was interesting because we hadn't thought about translating into Welsh until I was talking to a group of Welsh filmmakers, and so then we, you know.
Yeah, I have been in the television industry for 4 years.
Yeah.
I have dealt with a lot of viewing privilege, so I have to step up to their standard. And so I have to keep my resource with like trenches and writing note or whatever. So,
And you know, as we've said, inclusive working environment is one of the 4 standards. It's really important. And we actually work with some really good organisations. I don't know if you've heard of the TV Access Project, who specialise in, I mean, they provide some really good guidance for organisations and productions working with deaf and disabled filmmakers, crew, etc. We also work with Attitude is Everything, who do similar work for people working in theatre and also music, you know, people working in music, but also audience members as well, which is great. So yeah, our aim is to be as accessible as possible, and we're always taking on board feedback from people. We are very, very, very new and small organisation, but we have really good advisors and supporters, and we're always happy to get any feedback.
Thank you.
I think that was so enlightening to actually hear it open up like that, but also thank you for sharing your thoughts so candidly. I'll tell you what Claire's question was, since she was too quiet to do it herself. She said, I'm Irish, what about me? And this is why I'm saying, this is why this is not just about black and brown people. This is about us all. There is so much that binds us together, so much more that binds us together than keeps us apart. And that's what I want us to always remember. And as I mentioned before, you'll hear so much talk about protecting the next generation of creatives, the young generation, the 18 to 30-year-olds. Apparently now sometimes they're seen at 25. But it is clearly important. But as I mentioned, the focus of the Safe Space Sisterhood is on helping the creatives of today. So that's you sat there, mature creatives who either perhaps are struggling for voice or vision, but obviously for parity. And that's to help inform and inspire the generation of tomorrow. But what this does is protect the role and the vital contribution of the mature creatives. So what we're talking about is intergenerational working, and then obviously social commentary, discourse, and expertise at its best. And that's what we've got here right now. So thank you very much indeed. I'd like you to please join the Safe Space Sisterhood and tell us what you want in our feedback survey and help to shape our direction. And I put something on there about doing a membership fee, but I haven't even got the bank account yet, but don't tell anybody. So we're not at the stage of taking in any money. What we're at the stage of is creating a sisterhood. I will do the bank account. I know it's not that difficult. It's just there's so many things that need to be done. Please look out for our next meet in October, when, as I mentioned, we'll be addressing the perception, portrayal and reality of otherness as we negotiate the platform to access the creative industries. And, you know, we've got to think about who we really are. We are what should we call it? Interracial, international group of people. It's not just a few people sat there moaning and groaning in the background. So who's it for? It's for all mature creatives, people of colour, or allies of the black and brown community, and in particular, obviously today, we're looking at the focus on film, television, music, or theatre. But the Safe Space Sisterhood is all about anybody who would like to develop or be inspired and have real, honest, and open discussion in an environment that supports learning and growth, regardless of your race. I have learned so much in this journey. The most important thing I've learned is that there's no shortcuts. That's why we're going to go through things one by one. I had the privilege in my career of interviewing Dr. Niyi Akeju. And it is funny because I started off the interview and it's, you know, obviously you shake hands, and first of all I asked her to sign the books and she's like, I'm not signing my name on anything. So it's like, oh, okay, that's fine, I'll just keep these 12 books I've got. I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating. The 12 books I've brought along with me. But I started the interview and I said, so Maya, she said, let me stop you there. And I sort of, you know, what do you mean? And she said, you're not my friend. So again, I sort of took a step back and she said, when you're my friend, you can call me Maya. I am Dr. Niyi Akeju. And I left it in the interview because when we got to the end of the interview and I said, thank you very much, she basically said, now you can call me Maya. But the point is that every conversation I have, it's almost like a privilege. I'm like a sponge. I'm learning something every day. Dr. Niyi Akeju wasn't wrong. She was basically saying, give me the respect I deserve. You know, I'm not Maya. I'm Dr. Niyi Akeju, and I'm Dr. Niyi Akeju for a reason. Her quote, one of her quotes, my favourite quote is, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And I think I know better. I've seen what's going on in the industry, and I think it's not acceptable. So that's why I'm building the Safe Space Sisterhood, and we need your input. So please run, tell your friends, and sign up. And thank you very much indeed for your time and attention today. You'll find me on the radio in a couple of weeks' time, All FM, Tuesdays between 11 and 12 noon, Audrey's Early Drive, featuring, check out the mix client, the lovely Tasha Dean this week. Check it out, and because it's mixed in with the music. It's not just talk, it's talk and music, and I'm mad on music too. So once again, thank you for your attention. And Niyi, have you got anything that you want to say, or are we done?
No, all good. Please do check out the website. We also, there's at the very bottom, you can just sign up to receive any updates. So when we've got that reporting mechanism of our own going, you'll be the first to hear about it.
There's so many organisations out there. CIISA is a good one. It really is. Wait till you see my logo on their page. That's it, ladies. Good afternoon, and thank you very much indeed.